Hello magical hands and welcome to another tutorial. In this video you are going to learn how to make a tiered flare dress and also the invisible buttonhole. If that is something you want to learn, make sure to keep on watching. This tutorial was sponsored by Jessie J. In case you are wondering, Jessie J is not a brand. Jessie J is an individual that decided to sponsor this tutorial, and I want to especially thank Jessie J for sponsoring this video. So I have 3 yards of fabric and I placed them. I have 2 pieces of fabric here and I will be starting with the front piece. Right on that point, I will mark half an inch, and also on the top part I will mark half an inch. So this half an inch is going to be for the sewing allowance of the bottom band, because I'll be cutting the bottom band separately from the dress, and also for the top part it's just going to be, sewing allowance for the top part since we are not using a pattern paper. Right from that top part I'll start marking my basic bodice point. So the first point I have is from my shoulder to my bust point, which is 11 inches. I'll make a straight line across that point. Point will be from my shoulder to my waistline. We are going to skip the under bust line because this is a free dress, so mark from your shoulder to your waistline. Mine is 17.5 inches and I'll make a straight line across that point. My shoulder to hip line is 26 inches. Now if you want to recreate the same length as the picture inspiration, just go ahead and use your hip line as the full length of the top part, but I want mine to be a bit longer, so I just marked my hip point so that I'll use it to explain something to you guys later. And then I marked 30 inches as the full length of the top part of this blouse. Then the tiered flare can come underneath it after this 30 inches. Back to the starting line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which gives me 7.5 inches. Now I'll mark the width of the neckline, which is the wideness of the neckline. I will use 3.5 inches. And then for the depth of the neckline, I will use 3 inches. And I'll use my curve ruler to connect those 2 points together. Right where I marked my shoulder measurements, I will mark 1 inch downwards and I'll connect it to meet the neck width that we had there. This way I have created my shoulder slant or the shoulder slope. From my shoulder measurements downwards, I'll mark my round armhole measurements divided by 2, which gives me 8 inches. And I'll connect it to the right side, as seen. I'll just extend it to the right side. I'll find the midpoint of the armhole length, which gives me 4 inches. That's 8 inches divided by 2 gives me 4 inches. And at that 4 inches, I'm going to mark inwards half an inch. I'll place my curve ruler as seen, making sure that it is touching these 3 points, and I'll just go ahead and connect those 3 points together, which will give me my armhole curve. I'll move to my bust point line. I'm going to measure my round bust measurements and divide it by 4, which gives me 9.5 inches. I'll mark it and I'll add 1 inch for ease, and then I'll mark 1 inch for sewing allowance. I'll move to the waistline. I'll mark my round waist measurement divided by 4, which gives me 8 inches. I'll also add 1 inch for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. Now I don't really need my hip measurements, but we just need it as a guide. So I mark my round hip measurement divided by 4, just my exact measurement without any ease. Remember, this dress is supposed to be like an A-line dress. So I'll first of all connect my bust point to my waistline, and then I'm going to slant it in an A line, slant it outwards to the full length. Just make sure that it is way bigger than your exact hip measurement. Just go ahead and connect it as seen. Now you're going to add half an inch to the base of this full length, which is going to be the sewing allowance of the base, and we can go ahead and start cutting. In order to cut the back piece, I have to open up the fabric and fold one side of the fabric, because the back piece will have no zip allowance, so we are going to cut the back piece on fold. I'll place the front piece on the folded fabric in order to get my back piece. I know that when we were cutting this, we added half an inch at the center front of the front piece, which is supposed to be the allowance used to join the bottom band to the dress. But just go ahead and duplicate the exact same thing, and you're going to reduce the half an inch afterwards. For the neckline of the back piece, the depth will be 1.5 inch. Remember, we used 3 inches for the front piece, so the back has to be higher than the front piece. So connect it to meet the 3.5 inches we use on the shoulder width, as same as the front. And then for the armhole, while you are drafting the armhole, make sure to bring your hands outward, because the front armhole is usually more defined than the back armhole. So now that you're going to cut this, you're going to reduce 1/2 inch from that side. This is to make sure that our measurement is now exactly what it should be. I'll place the front pieces and the back pieces on each other. I'll make sure that they are placed right face facing the right face, and then I'll take this to my sewing machine. I'll join the side seams together and the shoulders together. Now while sewing the side seams, make sure that you are sewing only that 1 inch that we added for seam allowance. After sewing, I will mark what I have left, and I have 30.5 inches. Now that 0.5 inches is what I'll use to join this top part to the flay underneath it. So I cut a very long piece of fabric, and I cut it to the length of 9 inches. So by the time I join this together, I will have 39.5 inches there, and that is enough for all my allowance and the full length of the dress. So I'm just going to make a very regular stitch on this long piece of fabric I cut. I didn't use any measurements for the wideness. I made sure it was very long. So after sewing the loose stitch, what I did was to pull out one of the thread, and I'm going to drag that thread. So while dragging it, it's going to create gathers, and you're going to gather up the fabric just as seen. Now you're going to take your time and adjust this. I made sure that this fabric was very long. Like I said, I didn't use any measurements. I just went ahead and cut, some pieces of fabric and joined them together. I pulled the gathers together, and this is what it looks like. So I'm just going to place my top piece on this. I'm going to join the top part to these gathers. So while joining the gathers to the top part, you are going to use your hand and adjust the gathers while you are joining them together. This is the advantage of making gathers to pleat. I made the similar version of this dress for a client, but I did the pleats for hers. Like the picture she sent had the pleats, but this picture I'm recreating, they did gathers, and that's why I'm making gathers for mine. These pleats and gathers actually have the advantages and disadvantages, and one thing I like about the gathers is the fact that you can always adjust your gathers. Okay, you don't necessarily need that much measurements when you're working with gathers. So after you have joined them together, that thread that you used to put the gathers, you are going to lose it. It's very important to lose it. Take your time and lose it, because if you don't, you'll see that any little thing at all that picks that thread, your whole dress is just going to gather up. At this point, it's advisable you start ironing all your pieces together. Now we are going to mark the length of the blouse. That's for the bottom band. We are going to mark from the neck width, from the neck depth to the full length, and what I have there is 38 inches. That is how long my bottom band is going to be, 37 inches. For the first bottom band, I'm going to mark the length of 38 inches. You can add more allowance if you want to. And then I'm going to mark this bottom band, that's the width. I'll mark it to 3 inches. Now that's just for the first bottom band. And this particular bottom band is the one that's going to have the buttons sewn on it. Now I'll go ahead with my hot iron, and I'll conceal this fold with a good press. So by the time I fold 3 inches into 2, I'll be left with 1.5 inch. 1 inch is going to be for the bottom band, and 1/2 inch is going to be the allowance that I'll use to sew this bottom band to the dress. So now I'll place the bottom band on the left side of this blouse. That's where the button will be sewn, and I'll just go ahead and sew that 1/2 inch allowance that we have to sew there. This is what it looks like after I've sewn it. Now we're going to cut the second bottom band for the buttonhole. I also cut this bottom band, the length. I cut the length of 38 inches, but for the wideness, I will be using 2 inches, no longer 3 inches. I will use 2 inches, and I'll cut this in 2 separate pieces. So I'll just make sure it's 2 inches wide, and I'll cut it out. So I have the bottom bands here in 2 separate pieces. I'll place them on each other, right face facing the right face. Now I'm going to mark the midpoint of this band, and the midpoint of 2 inches is 1 inch. So I'm going to mark 1 inch and connect it with a straight line as seen. From the top part downwards, I mark 1 inch, and on that 1 inch, I will shade 1/2 inch. Now the space between each buttons will be 2 inches. So that is what I am marking right there. That shaded part is the part where the button will be. Now I'll just use this button as a guide to make sure that the space I have there is enough for my button to pass through. So guys, just make sure to repeat this process down to the full length. Now we are going to sew exactly on this line. We are going to make sure that we are sewing on that straight line, okay? Any part that has that shaded part, we are going to skip it, and we are going to back stitch a lot because we want this to hold firmly. So once I reach that part that is shaded, I'm going to raise my presser foot up and I will skip. I'll back stitch at that point so that it is very firm at that side, and then I'll continue sewing to the next point. Now you're going to repeat this process down to the full length of this bottom band. Afterwards, this is what it looks like, both the front and the back piece. Now those points where we have where we skipped, we are going to now cut the threads at those points, and we'll cut it on both the front and the back piece as well. So now for a closer view, you are going to hold it like this, you are going to fold it up like this, and then you can see the buttonholes showing right at that point. Now you're going to conceal this with a good press. Now we have to close up one of the sides of this bottom holes, this bottom band, and I'll just fold in 1/2 inch on both sides. I'll use my pressing iron to hold that down, then I'll take it to my sewing machine and sew very close to the edge of that part. And this is what it looks like after we've sewn the edge. Now we are going to sew the other 1/2 inch at the other side to the main dress itself. And this is a closer view of what it looks like. So now we are going to start making the collar of this dress. I'll fold up the dress as seen. This method of cutting my collar is easy, and actually it is very accurate for me. So I'll place a piece of paper underneath this. The main point is to get the outline of the neckline, okay? Make sure you're not placing it straight. Allow the neckline to relax on the paper properly. So you're going to just trace the neckline and stop at the shoulder line. That's going to be for the front piece. So now that we have that, I'm going to start marking the width of this neckline. So how wide I want this to be, that's the collar now, is 1 inch, and I'm going to mark 1 inch all round and connect it together as seen. I will indicate it as F, which means for the front. Now I'm going to contour this at the shoulder point, okay? At that shoulder point, on the top part, I'll go inwards by 1/2 inch, and I'll connect it to meet the base, the exact base that we have. That way, this collar is not going to just stand very straight. It's going to relax properly on your body. So for the back collar as well, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to place the neckline of the back piece, and I'll trace out the neckline, and I'll also stop at the shoulder point, okay? Just stop right there, and I'm going to start marking the width, which is 1 inch, and I'll connect it same way we did to the front piece. Now I'm going to still contour that neckline. I'll still do the same thing I did. I'll go in by 1/2 inch, and I'll connect it to meet the exact base measurements. Now I'm going to cut out these pieces. I'll also label it as B for back. Now we are going to join the front collar to the back collar. We'll join them at that shoulder line. Just use your tape and hold that together. In order to cut this, we'll have to cut it on fold, and that center back is the part that will be on fold. Just take your time and cut this nice and neat. Make sure to add your necessary sewing allowance all around it, and then make sure to cut this in 2 separate pieces as well, because one will be serving as the lining for the main piece. After cutting out the lining, the side with the longest curve is going to be the parts that will be attached to the dress itself. So that top side, that inner curve or that upside, is the part that we are going to turn. So you just take this to your sewing machine and you will sew up as indicated. Once you finish sewing, you flip it over to the right face. So this is what it looks like. We are going to flip it over to the right face as seen. Now you can give this a good press, and we'll go ahead and join this to the blouse. For a closer view, this is what it looks like, and also for the rough edges inside, I'll take this to my weavers and have them weave it. This is all the fabric I have left, so I went ahead to fold it into 4 so that I can cut my sleeves at once. So what I'm going to do is that this length is actually not up to the full length that I want, but like I said, this is the only fabric I have left. Now I'm going to take the armhole of the blouse, and I'm going to place it as seen on this folded fabric, and I'm going to trace out the armhole line. Ever since I started cutting out my sleeve like this, my sleeve game has changed. It has never remained the same. I don't draft a basic body sleeve to cut out my sleeve. I feel like these easy hacks makes sewing very easy, and I don't know why I'll have to go through the whole process when I can have it easily done. I'm not advising you guys to follow me, but this is what I do most of the time and it works for me. So once I draft the armhole of this blouse on this new fabric, I'm going to stop where the armhole itself stop. I'll just mark that part, so I have my exact armhole measurements there, and I'll just go ahead and add 1 inch for sewing allowance. I'll use my free hand and connect this to meet the base of this fabric that I folded. The base is supposed to be very long, very wide, and I'll just go ahead and cut this out. So I went ahead and cut out a band. I didn't really use a measurement, but it was enough to go around my wrist, my upper wrist, and I cut this band on fold. So now I'm going to open up one of the sleeves just to show you guys. I will gather up the sleeve and sew it to the band. So after joining them together, I'm going to place it right face facing the right face, and I'll sew the 1 inch for sewing allowance that is left. Now I'm going to attach the sleeve to the dress itself. And also I went ahead to make this long band. This was all I could get from the fabric left. So the easiest way I fix my buttons accurately is to place the button cover on each other, and then the one that has the buttonhole, in that buttonhole I'm going to mark and make sure that the chalk shows on the other band, and those points where I chalk will be the points that I will sew the buttons on. Also guys, we've come to the end of this tutorial. If you learned something new, make sure to like this video, make sure to share, make sure to subscribe, and also it's very important for you to share because this will help YouTube recommend this channel to other people as well. Thank you very much for watching to this point. That being said, see you in my next tutorial. Bye.